Hello, my name is Randy Reed. I'm the publisher and editor of the Edison Report, a sponsor of the National Lighting Bureau's annual Lighting Forum. We're here at the studios of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, where I'm serving as the moderator of 5 panel discussions. This panel is titled Windows and Daylighting, and it will focus on the use of daylighting to improve indoor lighting quality and reduce energy consumption. Panelists include Sarah Lopano, a lighting designer with Smith Group JJR, Dr. Brent Protzman of Lutron, and Seth Warren Rose of the NRF Institute. Welcome. Now, Sarah, the first question is for you. What are some of the strategies that we're seeing in successful daylighting of buildings?
So for daylighting to be successful, it really is a team approach to that success. No one party of the design team is solely responsible for it. So the best solutions involve the architect early on looking at the orientation of the building, where the fenestrations are, the lighting designer and electrical engineer designing control systems to take advantage of that, and even the mechanical engineer with energy modeling, making sure you're not letting in so much daylight that it's actually harming the energy performance.
So you mentioned owner, architect, engineer. Who should ultimately be responsible for the daylighting? Seth?
Yeah, Randy, that's an interesting question. So we've looked at some different scenarios in which, and more in Europe actually than in the United States, the architect gives away the daylighting to the engineer, and the engineers are comfortable with the numbers and the architects are less so. So we'd like to see lighting designers be the ones that specify daylighting, because they're the ones that understand the visual environment, and they're the ones that understand some of the complications that daylighting has, like glare, and really, who's going to do the best job of looking for the most amount of light with the least amount of heat gain.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Seth. Lighting designers have a really unique balance of understanding the human factor side, understanding the technology side, understanding metrics, and that's the important thing about daylighting. And daylighting is not a energy-only design decision. It's not a glare-only design decision. It's not thermal comfort only. It's not view preservation. It's all of those things. And that's one of the great things about daylighting is it can really drive comfort, well-being, productivity in a way that really most other building systems can't do, and it really takes the right kind of person to do that design.
So Brent, you mentioned glare, thermal controls. What are some of the biggest challenges facing the daylighting industry?
Yeah, so I would have to say that some of the challenges is the right design professionals be involved in the process. Daylighting is not necessarily a simple design process, right? I mentioned all the design considerations that have to go into it. We mentioned all the different professionals that are involved in this process, and to make sure that all of them are driving towards the same type of priorities and driving towards the same type of solution is important. And then you have to get down to understanding the right tools, the right resources. There's a lot of great tools out there today, but some of them aren't so simple for the average user to be able to do the daylighting design.
Seth?
Yeah, so we've seen that too. It's not an out-of-the-box solution, and that is one of the obstacles that we see to daylighting. So, but there are some solutions out there that have, some manufacturers that have developed some simple solutions that make it available. So, I think that's sort of the answer to the question.
Sarah, is daylighting important to the occupants, and do they know it?
I would say that it's definitely important. I think it is really one of those intangibles, I think, that occupants of a space, they know they like a space that they're in, but I don't think they always can tell that it's the daylighting that they like. I think it's more likely that they notice if it's an issue. If you're sitting at your desk in a beam of sunlight and you have a glare on your screen, that you notice in a negative way. I think in an ideal solution, it's actually not noticeable, but it creates the space that people want to be in and enjoy being in. I think it's actually easier to see it when it's an issue than I think when it's well done.
And I think that there's a lot of great benefits from daylighting the occupants might not necessarily know about. Obviously, the glare is one of the most important things that people think about. View preservation is critical. Being able to see outside, the connection to the outdoors, the well-being that provides is very important to occupants. It's been shown to improve productivity. It's been shown to improve test scores, overall comfort. there's a lot of great aspects to daylighting that we can feel, but we don't always necessarily put in the forefront of our thought.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned in some of the projects you've done?
Sure. I mean, I think what I've seen in my experience is, I think sometimes what people intuitively think will produce great daylighting actually produces excessive daylighting. So I think the trend towards a glass box architecture can actually have some negative effects when it comes to daylighting. So more is not necessarily better when it comes to daylighting. You actually want to hit that happy medium where there's not so much daylighting that it's a glare issue, but it's still enough that you reduce the need for electric lighting to save energy. So it's hitting that happy medium. I think there's plenty of examples out there that we've all experienced that it's actually excessive daylight to a point where it's not really a benefit anymore. It's actually a hindrance to how you're experiencing a space. So that's my lesson learned. More is not always better.
So we're in Washington, D.C. Would you take a stab at the number of buildings here in the D.C. metro area that have daylighting? Do you have any idea?
Well, I would say that almost every building has daylighting unless you're in a windowless warehouse. I just think not all buildings effectively integrate daylighting. You know, if you see a lot of office buildings in DC have shades up and down all over the place on the facade, you know, that's a sign that you have some uncontrolled daylighting that needs to be dealt with inside the building. And I would argue that the ideal solution is actually on the exterior of the building to control it before you have to start pulling down window shades all over your glass office building.
Please, Seth.
You know, I think one of the things, you know, people talk about daylighting and ROI is one of the obstacles of daylighting. You know, how do you measure happiness? How do you measure content employees? We looked at a study. There was an interesting project done at the Berkeley, California Library. So of the 5 Berkeley libraries in Berkeley, that one had the least amount of patrons. And then the architects did a phenomenal job and used an enormous amount of daylight in the exact way that it should have been done, and it became the most used library. And so the librarians also, we interviewed, and they said that we love working here, and they didn't like working there before. And so to see more patrons at the library, to see the employees happy, and we saw that again at a school. At you know, we looked at a project in Pennsylvania, a school project. And again, the teacher said they loved teaching in the school, and a test was done, much like the Hirschberg-Mahon report. They did a test with first graders, which they do every year, and then they saw a significant increase in performance with first graders for the test as a result of the daylighting was part of it, of course. The architect, Hayes Design Group architect, did a great job overall in the building, but the daylighting played an important role in the students' performance.
Please.
One thing I have been seeing as a trend, you know, here in DC and across the country is you're getting a lot less office buildings designed that have extremely deep floor plates. I think there's a certain amount of building
I don't know
stock.
what that means.
Okay.
What's a deep floor plate?
So if you look at the floor plan of a building, having a really, really large floor plan, so having a large floor, uninterrupted, think about a really big square if you look at the top of a building. That had been the trend for a long time, and there's a lot of buildings here in DC that are still designed like that and had been designed. But newer buildings now, instead of having a big square, it's actually, the trend is to more have these skinny rectangular buildings. And that's because more and more occupants and companies are seeing the value of daylighting to their employees. When you have a huge square floor plate of a building, you really don't get any daylight inside the interior, and people who are sitting there might not even be able to see out a window. And I think clients now are demanding more accessible daylight for all of their employees, and it's actually shaping the size of buildings and how they're designed now to actually get daylight into the floor plate and not have these mega huge floor plans that you don't even get daylight or views outside once you're in the middle of them. So I know my own office was an example of that. We moved from a very large floor plan where you couldn't even see outside to a much shallower plan where everyone has a view out the window from their desks. And that's a big trend. I think people are valuing it a lot more than they used to.
Yeah, and I think the industry as a whole is beyond just you know, the designers in the industry. The industry as a whole is understanding the value of this. Standards organizations are starting to have narrower floor plate, distance to the window kind of requirements, and standards such as LEED. There are well building standards that are around the well-being of occupants that have daylighting requirements. You know, even building owners and developers are seeing that they can have higher rent or higher sales of facilities that have more access to daylight and views.
Okay. Closing comments?
I would just say Daylighting is a difficult component to design for a building because it's nuanced and there's a lot of players that have to be involved to make it successful. But I think it's also one of the most critical pieces of design to really make a space enjoyable and successful in terms of the design.
Brent?
I'd like to say, daylighting is one of the major benefits of daylighting is the amount of energy, the amount of power, the amount of light that it provides. That's also one of the greatest detriments. So the dynamic nature of daylight is great for us, but we really need to consider how do we control daylight, how do we take advantage of the light when we want it and need it, and how do we make sure we don't provide too much when it can be too much and too intense. So systems that can adapt to that is perform much better.
Seth?
Yeah, so there's demonstrated evidence that daylighting is beneficial, but everybody knows for themselves when they choose an office, they choose an office with a window. We want a corner office because of the windows. We prefer a hotel room that has daylight. So we just feel, and that for all of the reasons that we see demonstrated, that daylighting is beneficial.
Okay, as we close, Seth, tell us a little bit about NRF Institute and what you're doing.
Yeah, so with regard to daylighting, NRF Institute publishes reports that are evidence-based, and we interview everybody along the sales channel from manufacturer to architect, engineer, and end user and occupants, and we look for success stories, and then hopefully they can be duplicated by other people.
Okay, well, I think that's so helpful because I think that's what the industry needs is data, and that's what I believe you guys provide. Okay, guys, thank you. Thank you very much.